Thank you. Well, it's really a pleasure to be here this afternoon and to have an opportunity to tell you about some of our work to try and reduce disparities in health throughout the world. I am trained as a bioengineer, and for much of my career, I really focused on how we could develop new technologies to improve health without really thinking explicitly about one very important question, which is who would have access to those health technologies. And like many of the people in my profession, I am motivated to try and develop technologies that can improve healthcare for my children's generation. And for people who live in Houston, like my kids, and for who have health insurance, they have access to really every available medical innovation. And if you look at 90% of the world's children, they live in developing countries. And their access to those healthcare technologies is much, much more limited than children who live in high-resource countries, who live in wealthy countries and who have health insurance. And the reason that exists is because of something called the 1090 gap. This is the fact that 90% of the world's expenditures to develop new healthcare technologies and medicines is focused on addressing health conditions that affect 10% of the world's population. Now, why do we have the 1090 gap? Well, part of the reason is if you look in Houston, if you look at the medical center, there is a tremendous economic incentive for companies to develop medical technologies to improve healthcare in this setting. And there's a whole system designed to get those technologies there. There's an infrastructure to support their use, and there's trained physicians and nurses and PAs to use those technologies. In contrast, if you look at the places where most of the world receives their health care, it's places like this. This is a photo that was taken in Haiti. And this is a clinic that is run by a medical brigade. It's set up outside of a school. And you can see that there's very little infrastructure there to support bringing in any kind of health technology. There's a very limited number of healthcare professionals, and they can only go to these communities when the roads are passable. So during the rainy season, often these communities are completely without trained healthcare professionals. If we look at the Democratic Republic of Congo, this is a very typical laboratory at a health center. And you can see there's one piece of equipment, a microscope, and there's another piece of equipment right here. It's a hand crank centrifuge. There's no electricity to support. There's no running water. The microscope is next to the window because the sun is the source of light for the microscope. And so these are communities that largely do not have access to the results of healthcare innovation. And so our program was founded in early 2007. It's an Institute for Global Health Technologies here at Rice, and we were founded on the premise that healthcare innovation should be available to all the world's citizens. And I want to tell you a little bit about how we came to develop this vision and how we came to be able to tell the story of how we at Rice might contribute to this goal of making healthcare innovation available to all the world's citizens. The approach that we decided to take was to start at a somewhat unlikely place, start with undergraduate students. And what we did in our program was to partner with physicians and nurses who are delivering care in low-resource communities and ask them to identify the challenges that they faced in delivering care. And we turned those challenges into design problems that were then addressed by teams of undergraduate students in our Global Health Technologies minor. And then we provided opportunities for these students to travel back to those communities with their solutions. And this is Ben Liu, who graduated in bioengineering a couple of years ago. He's now a medical student at NYU, but he went to Swaziland. And so our vision was that we could create the next generation of leaders that was prepared to innovate new technologies, to work with professionals in low resource settings, and really think about how these technologies could be scaled in ways that could be sustained. But back in 2006, 2007, people really didn't buy that vision. And I pulled up an email that I got from the director of development at Rice, who was trying to help us raise money for our program, and the subject was the vision thing. And he wrote to me and he said, I was thinking about the vision thing and why people think your vision is kind of all over the place. And he said, if you look like initiatives like one laptop per child, they have a goal, which is reduce the digital divide, and they have a specific vision of how they're going to do that, build $100 computers. And he said, what you have is you have a big vision, which is to reduce healthcare disparities, but you're addressing it with a process of creating leaders and developing technologies. And that doesn't ring true for people. They don't understand how you're going to actually achieve this at the end of the day. And so he said, we need a big specific objective. And he suggested two that just made great. He said, how about create 500 new technology companies in 20 years that are dedicated to this cause? Or how about create each year one highly effective life-saving technology that costs less than $100? And he said, now, obviously, you'll do more than just that, but this is the kind of big objective that you need. What do you think? And so we came back to our team, and we were like, oh my God, this is impossible. I mean, we would be happy if once in our career we invented a life-saving technology that cost less than $100. And we joked at the time that maybe our vision should be making people live forever, because it seemed like that was what he was suggesting we needed to do. And so we decided at that time that we just would not worry really about what is the big vision that we were trying to communicate to the outside world, and we would see what we could do. And from that, it turned out to be a really valuable approach to take, because from that we figured out where we could have success, and those specific examples of success made it much easier for people to understand how we could go about using this approach to reduce healthcare disparity. So it's been a long journey, but I want to share with you two examples of successes from that journey that really helped to shape our vision. And the first comes from a design course that was taught for freshmen. And the challenge came from pediatricians who were treating children who were at risk of contracting HIV from their mothers because their mothers were HIV positive. Now, in many settings, it's hard to get formula, and so women need to breastfeed to be sure that their babies have adequate nutrition. But unless both mom and baby receive antiretroviral therapies, then there is a significant risk that the virus would be transmitted from mom to baby. And so the pediatricians wanted a tool that could help ensure that these liquid medicines that were being given to the babies would always be given in the proper dosage, even as that dosage increased as the baby grew. And so our team of students had a really great idea. And this is the napkin sketch they made of the first device, which is, you can see a little plastic clip that you would insert into a syringe barrel, and you can only pull it back now to the proper dose. And Ben Liu actually took that technology to Swaziland, and he was able to connect pharmacists of the Ministry of Health and the Clinton Health Access Initiative that led to the countrywide introduction of these dosing clips throughout Swaziland. And that's been going now for the last 3 years. And Ben and some other students who participated on that team were recognized at one of the CGIU university meetings a couple of years ago. I want to share with you one other story, which is a little bit of a longer story, that comes from Malawi. Malawi is a country in sub-Saharan Africa that has the highest rate of preterm birth in the world. 18% of babies in Malawi are born prematurely. And one of the challenges that premature babies often face is that it's hard for them to breathe because their lungs lack a protein called surfactant that reduces the surface tension in the alveoli of their lungs. And you can think of every breath that those babies have to take like being the first puff of air that you would put into a balloon. And you know that every successive puff of air you put into a balloon, it's easier to do that. But for those babies, when they breathe out, their alveoli collapse. And so they breathe in, and it takes tremendous work for them to keep breathing for about a week until they become mature enough to start producing surfactant. And so this is a picture from the biggest hospital in Malawi. And you can see here there's 4 babies that are sharing a cot. All of them were born prematurely. We know from data in the United States that there is an effective technology called CPAP. It stands for continuous positive airway pressure, you just blow a mix of air and oxygen into those babies' lungs to prevent that alveolar collapse with exhalation. And in the United States, what happened when CPAP was introduced is we went from 25% survival for babies that have breathing difficulties to 70% survival. That happened in about 1970. But today, Malawi still lacks CPAP, and their standard of care is nasal oxygen, which is not effective. Only 1 in 4 of those babies would be expected to survive with that therapy. And the challenge is that CPAP machines cost $6,000, and that's just too expensive for Malawi. And so we gave that problem to a team of senior engineering students as their capstone design challenge. And in the spring of 2010, this is the device that they had developed. It's a $160 bubble CPAP machine. And they were able to take it across the street to Texas Children's Hospital and demonstrate that their device provided exactly the same therapeutic flow and pressure as the devices that are used here in Houston to treat babies that are born prematurely. And so one of the students on that team, Jocelyn Brown, took the device to Malawi. You can see here she's demonstrating an early version of it for the nurses at Queen Elizabeth Central Hospital. And they gave her lots of feedback about what they liked about this design and what they didn't like. And she took that information and she came back to Rice, and she was able to write a little grant to get some money from an organization called NCIIA. And she was able to significantly improve the usability of the device and how robust it was. But everything that's inside is still exactly the same as what that senior team designed. And so with that, we were able to write a grant to USAID to get $250,000 to go back to Malawi and carry out a clinical trial of this technology. And so here's our pediatrician, Liz Molyneux, that we collaborate with. There's Jocelyn helping to lead the training of all the CPAP nurses that implemented this technology in the neonatal unit in Malawi. And what did we find? Well, we found that in that study, babies who received nasal oxygen had a survival rate of just under 24%, whereas babies who received CPAP had a survival rate of nearly 65%, mirroring almost exactly what happened when CPAP was introduced in the United States. With that data, we were able to get a follow-on grant from USAID for $2 million to roll out CPAP from the central hospital with the medical school to 3 other central hospitals. And now we're in the process of rolling out to all of the district hospitals in the country. That's a total of 28 hospitals, and we're about halfway through that rollout. And we've been able to get additional support to roll out to Zambia, Tanzania, and South Africa. But the real success of CPAP is illustrated in this picture here. This is when we were at Machinga District Hospital carrying out the training. And afterwards, one of the nurses who was being trained came up to Jocelyn and she said, I had a little boy who was born about 6 months ago, and he was born early. And they couldn't take care of him here at Machinga, so he was transferred to Queen Elizabeth Central Hospital, and he was treated with CPAP. And we said, oh, we would love to meet him. And she said, he's just across the street. I'll go get him. It was really a wonderful opportunity for Jocelyn to see firsthand the impact that her work was having in Malawi. We're working with a commercial manufacturer called Third Stone Design to produce these devices, and the target sales price is $400 for these devices. And they're now, as I said, being rolled out throughout the country with this commercial version of the CPAP. Our goal for this project is to address the global challenge of prematurity. 10% of babies are born too early. That's 15 million babies throughout the world. And without help, 1 million of these babies will die. We have the tools to turn the tide on neonatal mortality and really change this situation. And in thinking about how we share the vision for our project, we're really focused on developing something we call the nursery of the future, which is a comprehensive set of technologies that can be implemented at a district hospital to meet all the needs of newborn babies and to make the day of birth a day of celebration for families. Our goal as a project, as a program, is to develop a nursery of the future that can be purchased for $5,000 to fully equip a hospital that would serve a catchment area of 250,000 people. And we're well on our way to doing that. And I want to just close with a quote that was really important to me personally in this project. It comes from one of my heroes in global health, Bill Fahey. And he said he was talking about their efforts to eradicate smallpox. And he said, we learned the need for optimism. The trouble with being an optimist, of course, is that people think you don't know what's going on, but it's the way to live. And that's the biggest lesson that we've learned from this project. Thank you. I'd be happy to take any questions.